me great pleasure to introduce my listeners today to, well, a lot of you probably already heard him, but Frank Turner. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm just getting, as you can hear, I'm a bit nasally. This isn't my normal voice. Just
And
getting.
yet still so mellifluous and seductive. So
Oh,
hooray.
thank you, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Just got over a bout of the old COVID, so
Oh, how very retro.
I know, right? I was just like,
Yeah.
I haven't had something for a while, and you know how when you crave something, and I got a week off work, so um, but yeah, this is my first like podcast back from that, and I'm just sort of gonna see how it goes. So if I start coughing and stuff, excuse me. I have got
Understood.
various libations in front of me to help me get through this, so I may be swigging on those throughout this interview. But no, welcome to the DJ Force X podcast. It is a great pleasure to have you on. Um, I we've met many years ago when you were in a band called Million Dead.
Good
Uh,
Lord. Yes, I
yeah,
was.
we,
Yeah.
we're going back. We're going back that far. I was in a band at the time.
What
We
was the band?
It's a band called Zero Cipher.
I remember Zero Cipher.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, nice. Well, very nice to speak to you.
Excellent. No, it's very nice to speak to you. I mean, I remember playing with Million Dead a couple of
Yeah.
times. I think Uxfest was one of them, and
Yeah.
another venue which we'll talk about in a moment because you just recently played there
Okay.
as well. But yeah, no, it was no, like watching your career from here. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about your new album, which is your 10th solo album. So we've got a little bit of history between then and here. Which we won't go over all of it. It was just like watching. I just want to go watching your career. England in My Bones. That album was fantastic.
Thank
Um, and all you, I mean, your album's coming out from, I mean, from Million Dead because I was very much into my sort of hardcore punk kind of sound at
you.
the time. So very much my wheelhouse back then. And then watching you go off and do this solo thing, like what you're doing now is it's a million years from it. Um,
Sure.
I'm sure it feels like that in some
Yeah,
respects.
it certainly does. I mean, it's funny. It's a long period of time. Absolutely.
Hmm.
One of the things, not really with any special conscious design, but the last couple of records I've made, there are moments on them that have sort of like curved back around
Yeah,
the edge of space time
yeah,
into something a little more kind of musically closer to what Million Dead was doing. And I sort of spotted myself doing it and went. I sort of have this inbuilt kind of like, oh no, they must be different kind of thing. And then it's at a certain point, it's like, why? Who fucking cares? It's my music and do what I want. And it was really fun. The first track on my last record, my ninth album, FTHC, is could well be a Million Dead song, and it's fun to be back there.
yeah. I was gonna say a lot of the songs I've been hearing, especially on this new album, there were moments where I was like, "Oh, hang on, he's touching on that like
Yeah,
that part of his history." Which is great. It's like it's adding. I mean, it's adding that kind of like I don't know. You get that kind of burst of youthfulness. I mean, I did it earlier this year.
oh,
Zero Cipher semi got back together. There's two of
nice,
us, and we put together basically some old demos we were working on back before we split. And we put them out.
amazing.
And it was just kind of like it was that moment for me where it was like I'm still doing this like 10, 15, 20 years later.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
No, but then who cares? I mean, we called the album new metal because that's what we were at the time, and that's basically what this album is. It's got
That's you know what? That's actually an excellent title for a record.
all right. It was I could we had a couple of options and I was like, no, we're gonna call it new metal because that's what it is, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was scratching away on these turntables at the back here, and
Awesome.
we had all the big riffs going and all that kind of stuff, and it was just like it's exactly what it is. Let's call it what it is. And
Cool.
and there's a small resurgence of new metal at the moment, so it's caught a little bit of some new listeners come checking out some of the older stuff, which is nice. But you know, it's a struggle to keep them and keep their attention. They veer off other places now. Very quickly. Like one minute you've got a few thousand listeners, and the next minute it's down to like 90. You're like, all right, that's what it is now. It's
We live in fickle times. That's true.
we do indeed. Um, but yeah, let's talk your album. Going on to my stuff. Let's talk your album, Undefeated. It
Yes.
is out now, and you celebrated this release with something very special, um, which we touched on. I touched on a little bit earlier, with just with one of the venues. But you went off and you broke a world record.
Yes, I
Uh,
mean it's the word "celebrated" is an interesting one. It didn't feel enormously celebratory at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll tell you that.
I can imagine. I mean, when you're, I mean, one of them, you're in the West End Centre in Aldershot, which
Oh,
is,
the Westie, yeah,
yeah,
what a venue! And you know what? It was my first time there in a very long, in about 17 years, and you know, venues sort of your memory of spaces sort of is slightly warps things and all the rest of it. But I was. I was really happy to be back there. It's such a cool place. An old friend of mine works there, and all the rest. Barney Jevons, and
oh, Barney. Yep, we love
good
Barney.
old Barney. And so yeah, so it was really cool. I mean, I must admit that was the 7:30 a.m. show. So
Yes.
it was for people who don't know. Yeah, 15 shows in 15 different towns in 24 hours was the assigned challenge, and we did it.
Yes, congratulations.
And there was the final show was in Southampton at the Brook, which was awesome because I love that spot. And that was kind of euphoric. There were some bits prior to that that were less than euphoric. Mainly, actually, the journeys between the gigs.
Yeah,
You know, a gig is fine. You get up on stage. It's what you love doing. It's where
yeah,
you're meant to be. Happy days. And then you go and you throw your jacket back on and get back into the cab again because we had the cab company driving us around
yeah.
and just for the first sort of 10, let's say, journeys between gigs, me and my crew were sort of cracking jokes and laughing and having a good time, blah, blah, blah. And then towards the end, it just got really like there wasn't much chat. Do you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just like there were four of us and four people just sat in a cab going, why? But we made it and we got it, and happy days. And I should say, by the way, that the important thing about it, obviously, you know, it's promoting my album, and
Yeah.
it's a game, it's a gimmick, and all that kind of business. But the thing that I enjoyed about it was that every show was an independent music venue trust venue, and every show was ticketed by a independent record store.
Yes.
And you know, there was a sense of we got 3,000 people through the doors of indie venues at unlikely times of day, and I feel pretty good about that because that's a thing that's very important to me.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely. I mean, the local one to me was the Westie. I still live around that area.
Mm-hmm.
And the record store that ticketed the show was 101 Collector Records.
I was going to say 101, yeah.
Yeah, big fans of those guys. I've loved that store because I lived in Farnham as a child, um,
Right.
and I spent a lot of money in that record store, and I continue to do so. Uh,
Good, excellent.
because I've got that one, and I've got one called the Rock Box, which is in Camberley, which is another independent record store. There's another one in Guildford called Dance Two Records, which is more electronic dance music, hip hop sort of
Cool.
stuff. But that's my other musical passion on there. But there's three. I'm very lucky in having three
Yeah,
independent
yeah,
local, along
absolutely.
with the big ones as well. We've got HMV here in Guildford and Reading and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they're trying their best to be independent stores by looks of their stuff. But not to knock them, I used to work for them as well. So, but it's yeah, it's great that you have that, like, and obviously with the independent the venues as well, because a lot of them I know are struggling, and I've played many of these venues as well over the years, and a lot of the ones now I look back on, like when I was reminiscing last year, it was like our 20th anniversary of the album, whatever. But I was looking at I'm the keeper of the archive, so I've got like all our gigs in files, like written
Sure.
where we played, and a lot of those venues no longer exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look back on old Million Dead tours or
Yeah,
the tour I did for my debut album in 2007. There's a lot of places that have gone, and it's a funny thing because, like, I do think it's important to be a little realistic and say that running a small independent venue is never going to make anybody rich. Do you know what I mean? It's
definitely.
always going to be a labor of love, and it's a sector in which there is always going to be a degree of turnover. So I think standing there, kind of saying that no venue should ever close is a little much, possibly. Having said all of that, clearing my throat, you know, the last 5 years, particularly for obvious reasons, have been really rough for independent venues. You know, if your business model is cramming strangers together into confined spaces, it's not brilliant. No rule of three is going to work out with, you know, a bar take that keeps the lights on.
Yeah,
But so you know, it's been a tough time, and my hat goes off. If I was wearing a hat right now, I'd take it off to the Music Venue Trust and those guys. And like, I work with them a lot, and I try and do my bit, but important to say that they're the ones who actually do the work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, places like the Westie. I mean, I was like, it was the house of one of my, I think probably one of my first shows I ever went to as a kid, in particular. So that venue is incredibly important to me, and I continue to go there on and off over the years whenever they've got, something interesting on. And I know Barney as well. I've known Barney for, well, I think we all know Barney around here if you've ever been in
Yeah,
a band.
and if you live in
Um,
that part of the world, you know
yeah,
Barney.
exactly, exactly. And it's difficult because I got the same kind of name as him. I mean, I'm Barnaby, but he's Barney.
Right.
But we always got like people would confuse our names. I think I was a gig promoter instead of a band member and stuff like that. So we go way back, but we got plenty of venues around here as well that were like, obviously we've got the Boiler Room in Guildford.
Which
Um,
I played one of the first ever shows at the Boiler Room,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Was it Dom who set up the Boiler Room?
yep.
Was that her
Dom
name?
Dom was the, I think she still owns it.
Dom Shopord, I believe her surname was.
Yes,
Anyway,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
pronounce the last name, but well done.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And Toby from Meet Vincent Louis was involved as well, I
yes,
seem to remember, and
yeah,
all that. A lot
um,
of, I mean, I've played the rugby club in Camberley at one point in time
yeah,
as well. I remember
yeah.
that. That's good. And yeah, a lot of good venues.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, it's like I say, I've been quite lucky with what I've got around here. I play a couple of them as I DJ nights at the Star in Guildford, and there was a
Oh
nightclub in.
yeah, the Star. That's great. That's a great spot as well.
There's plenty of venues around here, and they seem to be doing okay. They went through a bit of a the Star went through a bit of a time local residents thing. Some person bought
Sure.
the places behind them and then decided to complain about the noise,
Yes. Yeah.
which is always silly because the the community kind of went, "Hang on, this venue's been here
Yeah,
longer
sure.
than
Well,
the
there was, in 2014, I led a campaign for the Music Venue Trust called the Agent of Change Principle, which was basically trying to enshrine in law the idea that it's the person who changes what's going on has to deal with the consequences of that, by which it means that if you move in next to a venue,
yeah,
you can't then complain about noise. However, if somebody builds a venue next to your house, that's a different situation, which strikes me and I think most people as an eminently fair way of dealing with the situation. But
yeah,
it's an old cliche almost at this point. Somebody buys a house or moves into a house next to a venue that's been there for 40 years and makes two complaints and then the venue gets shut down, and it's
yeah,
just kind of like, but you moved here because there was a venue here. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. But no, I mean, getting the awareness up, which you've done with this or which you do, is fantastic. And the record attempt as well. Like you say, it might be gimmicky, but it's a hell of a thing. I remember I played a few shows in a row before, a matinee show, and and that's tiring enough. And you did
Yeah, I
15 of
mean, I
those.
was sort of braced for it to a degree, but I mean, not enough.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you could have been braced for it enough. And I mean, ultimately, the other thing I should say, by the way, so the pre-existing world record was 10. I did 15.
yeah,
As and when anybody tops that, I will be cheering them on at the finish line. I'll be there
nice,
with a hug and one of those silver foil things they put on
nice.
marathon runners. You know what I mean? I think it'd be fantastic if somebody beat it.
Yeah, I mean, it's there to be done. I mean, it's an interesting challenge. I would like to see it go on and see what people can do and what the sort of like rules of it. Like, because obviously you did 15 in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And
There's so there's a set of rules. I mean, I won't go through all of them, but essentially, they've got to be ticketed shows. They've got to be you've got to have a certain number of people there. You've got to have they've got to be a certain distance away from each other. They've got to be you've got to play for a certain amount of time. Actually, you've got to play 15 minutes. I did half-hour sets to everyone.
okay,
So strong.
flex.
But yeah, I mean, planning it was kind of was fun actually. I bought like a paper roadmap, a poster of the UK, and just started putting pins in it at this very table that I'm sat at now.
Nice.
It felt like I was planning a military campaign. But it's I mean, there are emptier bits of the UK than others. I mean, a few people when we announced it were like, "Why aren't you coming to Newcastle?" And it's like because there's fucking nothing between Leeds and Newcastle. Like, and if you go up that way, then you just kill. You've only got a certain amount of time, and you kill all this time just driving. So it took some doing planning, but we got there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I applaud you for that because it's a crazy thing. And obviously, I like to say there are guidelines, there are rules, and yeah, it's just fulfilling that and doing more show than you had to as well. So uh,
Well, I mean, first of all, I like playing. I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. My journey through the music industry, one of the things that puzzles me the most is the number of bands that you kind of come across who seem to regard playing music as a chore, and it's just like, like the Sheffield show, they were like because they call them out stores, you know what I mean? The record store books at the venue, blah blah blah, and the guys it's the second one I've done at the Foundry in Sheffield, and they've told me that they were like the majority of bands coming through here do 3 songs, and I'm like, I would be embarrassed to gather 500 people together and then play 3 songs and then leave. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a gig. And I like playing. Do you know what I mean? It's my
Yeah,
favorite part of what I do. There's lots of different parts of what I do, but the bit where I get to get a guitar and get up on a stage, that's great. I love it. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? More of that, please. So, as tiring as it was, as I said before, the bits when I was actually playing were the manageable parts.
good. No, excellent, excellent. It's nice to hear that you enjoy playing because I have met these musicians that God, playing live is a chore or don't want to play live. They just want to produce music and people to listen,
Sure.
which is fine if that's their journey. But some people want to see how these things translate live, and
Sure.
and some people like to actually put these things like yourself, play them. You wrote this thing, you want to perform it. It's your art
Right.
piece,
Yeah, yeah.
it's going out. But let's talk about the album Undefeated. It came out on Friday.
Yes.
Um, Couple of cracking tracks. I mean, it's an album. It's great. It's a great summer album. I can feel it. I was listening to it. I was like, the sun was out earlier today.
Yeah,
Not,
it's gone in again, hasn't it?
but it
Yeah.
was great. I had it on in the car. I had it on like as soon as I got this thing confirmed today, I was just like, listen to it. But I missed out on getting the record on Record Store Day, but I heard the Girl from the Record Shop track, which I absolutely love. But I missed out on that 7 inch. I'm a big fan of Record Store Day.
Me
Um,
too.
in general, I spent so much money this year. It was ridiculous. But I got all the albums that I wanted, apart from I think one and that one single, which was yours.
Well,
But I will still try and track it down. That's part of the fun of Record Store Day. It's
isn't it?
that little hunt afterwards, and I've always loved digging through record stores anyway. So
Indeed.
um,
Well,
these
that's
turntables aren't just for show at the back here; they do get used. So,
Funny enough, there's a line in that song about how I don't even own my own. It's a fun song. It's not a
oh
very
yeah,
serious song.
yeah,
In everyday buying so much vinyl, don't even own my own turntable. It's a song about being 14. Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? And like, I was at a show recently in California, and a guy came to the show, and like, it was a record store show, so we were in a shop, and this guy offered to buy me a turntable. He was like, "Do you really not have a turntable?" And I was like, "I've got a fucking turntable. What are you talking about?" But he'd taken the song more literally than intended. It was an incredibly generous gesture,
Oh yes,
and hats off to
yeah,
him. But the other problem with it, of course, is that I was in the States and I have a suitcase that can hold X amount of stuff, and
yeah.
it's like, where do you think I'm going to put a fucking record player in this show? You know what I mean?
No, it's crazy, but no, I mean that song totally sums up my kids as well. In as much as that they've bought vinyl,
Love
they
it.
don't have their own turntable.
Sure, but
I don't ban them from this, so
right. Well, there you go.
I'm not one of those. But they want their own turntable, but they've bought albums of artists on vinyl, and they've not just purely because they want
Sure.
that
I
they've
do
got.
think there is a thing about like I know of people who buy records who don't have turntables. I mean, it's not for me to judge, but partly it's a gesture of support for an artist or whatever, and they'll buy the vinyl and then listen on Spotify, which is fine. Also, there's something pleasingly solid about a vinyl. I mean, I grew up with CDs. That's my, dare I say it, our generation. But
Yeah,
nevertheless, like, artwork on vinyl looks better. It's bigger. Like a nice 180 GSM vinyl is a nice substantial thing. When you spend your time and your money in a studio making a record, and if you just come away with MP3s, it's a bit like, oh. If you come away with something physical, it's kind of better, and you can give it to people for Christmas or beat your
yeah,
enemies around the head with it. There's
yeah.
there's a lot of options.
No, it definitely is. Definitely is. It's one thing that I have not ever been able to achieve at the moment. There's still time, but releasing on vinyl, I've never always
Yeah,
wanted.
it's an investment
It
for sure.
is, and I don't think I've got the collateral and the sort of guarantee the other side of it to do it.
Sure, sure.
The day will come. I will release something on vinyl, but that'll be when I'm a bit, when money isn't so much of a problem, um, or someone decides to go, you know what, Barnaby, you can do that. Here you go. Here's the money. You go do that. But that won't happen either. But no, this on your album, fantastic track, Do One, which you got an album out
Yes.
for. Sorry, it's a video out for. International Hide and Seek Champion, another one people can see the video for and everything as well. I really love the Pandemic PTSD.
Oh,
That
thank you.
that was a
Yeah.
track like it just hit me, and Ceasefire as well. That's
Awesome. Thank you very much.
another
Yeah.
one that I was just like, you've got singles, people hear those. It's one of
Thank you.
those
That's
things
fine.
where it's
We
just like,
it's funny
yeah,
enough. My band and I, I wrote the songs, we arranged them together. We've been working up, the live performance of those arrangements lately. We haven't had as much time to do it as we would have liked yet because I've been so fucking busy promoting the record. And Pandemic's the one that everyone's a bit like, oh my god, we have to learn that fucking song. It's a complicated song. It has a lot of different sections.
yeah.
There's a bit in the middle that we call the meatloaf bit, and so there's just lots of different chunks to it, and everyone's just like slightly. We have a rehearsal starts on Friday, so
Okay,
everybody,
cool.
hopefully, everyone's been practicing at home.
Good. I mean, I'm gonna try and catch you guys. I know you've got your big show next year at Ali Pali.
Yes,
Gonna be your 3000th show.
yeah, which is a ludicrous number of shows,
That
a
is a
genuine number, I should say as well. There are certain people who seem to not believe me when I tell them I've done that many shows, but the list is public; it's on my website, so
yeah.
people can go and
Go count.
inspect that should they wish to. But yeah, I mean, it's like I'm very, but with that show and with the album generally, I'm in a place where I'm kind of have this weird mixture of pride, surprise, and gratitude. I'm proud to be doing my 3000 show and my 10th album and all that kind of thing. I mean, like, it's not the most important thing in the world, but it's important to me. So happy days. I'm surprised in the sense that when I started doing this, if you told me I'd do 10 albums, 3000 shows, I'd think you were smoking some good drugs and could I have some? And then, but mostly grateful because I'm, of course, aware that I get to do this because people give enough of a shit for me to do it again,
No, it's just it's
which is a wonderful thing.
it's just one of those watch like again when I said at the start, like watching your career. There's a few bands that I've watched from back in the day that are now playing these venues, these big venues that we dreamed of playing. You know, when I was a kid, it was always like, I want to play my local venue. I want to play the Westie. I want to play the Agincourt. I want to play in London.
Cool. Fucking hell, there's a shout. Good lord.
Right? It's still there. Um, it's still a venue, kind of. And I wanted to play the Astoria in London. Never got the chance.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
close. Played like the Metro, the Borderline. I got close. I was closing in on it.
Yeah. Zooming in on it. You know what? I played the last ever show at the Astoria, along with lots of other people.
Yeah,
The thing was, I wasn't big enough to headline it at the time, but I think it was clear that I was heading in that direction. That kind of like my next album cycle, I would be doing the Astoria, and I never headlined the Astoria, and that will always be. I played there as a support act a bunch, and I played this weird final show there, but I never headlined the Astoria, which genuinely is a sadness to me.
yeah. I recently went through London and walked past it used to be, and it's very strange. It's
It's
very
very different. Yeah, I lose my bearings when I get out of Tottenham Court Road. That used to be the absolute hub of everything for me. Because, like you say, you had the Metro, the Borderline, the LA2, the Astoria, all these great venues,
yeah,
sort of top end of Soho. And it's just like, I used to know exactly where I was when I came out of that tube station. And now it's just like, which way is north? Like, do
yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I had exactly the same feeling when I was there. It was the hub of everything. It was literally especially for the alternative sort of rock side of things.
Sure.
And being a musician, I mean Denmark Street and everything around there and everything.
Right. I mean, and ultimately cities change, and that's what
Yeah,
cities are supposed to do. And I think that living in a city is a salutary lesson in learning that nothing stays the same.
yeah,
Nevertheless, like I do think that they're a pretty. I think that we were lucky to have experienced a moment in time when
yeah,
alternative music had a home in central London, because that is definitely not the case anymore.
yeah. No, definitely, definitely. And just going back to what I was saying, like with watching yourself and watching like Skindred is another band from back when
Mm,
I was young.
sure.
They were around then as well, and I no doubt you've played with them countless times. And now they're sort of being propelled finally to where
Oh
everyone's
yeah.
what they should be.
What a band! What a band! My mum met Benji at a festival one time, which was one of the weirder moments in my love life. Weirdly enough, they got on very well. So
That's good. That's good. It would have been weird if it was anything else.
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just like watching yourself and then watching you like play Wembley Arena back a few years back, um, and watching Skindred do it, watching like all these bands play these like arena shows because normally those were reserved for bands coming over.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, and watching where you're now where you are now and seeing what you're doing now and looking at the size of the venues you're playing and going to be playing. When you've got a tour obviously coming up. Um, is it later this
Which
year?
is,
To
yeah,
next
it is nice to see it. It is sold out, which is a
year?
pleasant thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, So we put Show 3000 on sale, which I don't want to jinx things or blow smoke on my own ass, but it looks like that's actually probably going to sell out quite soon as well, which is sort of bananas. And I'm very grateful and proud about that too.
Nice.
So yeah, so after which then of course there will be more shows. So there are people who are frustrated about ticket access and stuff at the minute, which is a good problem to have in life, I suppose. But there's more coming.
Good, good, excellent. That's good news. Yeah, I recently went to Ali Pali myself. I took my one of my kids to see Pierce the Veil. Oh, no, they took me to see Pierce the Veil.
There you go.
Put it that way. Because they were originally going to go with one of their friends, and their friend flaked out, and um, I ended up driving her in. So
There you go.
she was very happy, but it was a very good show. I mean, it was the second time I've ever been to Ali Pali. First time I went when I was 16.
Lovely. I used to live pretty much next door. I don't anymore. I'm out in Essex these days. But like, there was one show we did there where I was able to walk home in my stage gear and then have a shower in my own shower, and that was pretty fucking cool.
So it's a glorious feeling, isn't it? It's like sleeping in your own bed after a show. It's,
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, very much.
it's great, and yeah, so that venue is up top of a great massive hill, so it's
Yeah,
always a fun walk.
yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Man, I'm gonna have to dash in a sec. I'm afraid I
yeah, I
haven't.
was going to say I was going to tie things up.
All right,
So yeah, one last question, if I can,
please.
as I cough away finally. What are your hobbies away from music? So when you're not doing this thing, where you're going out breaking records, doing 50 shows in 50 states, and all that kind of stuff, what do you do?
Well, I mean, the first answer to that question is that in a way that I think is probably quite boring is that I go to shows. I mean, I love independent underground live music. You know, these days I live near Colchester, and they've got got three amazing independent venues in Colchester. So I will often find myself in Three O's Monkeys or Coda or the Arts Centre. Beyond that, I like walking. I like reading. I like walking around the sea. I do a lot of coastal walking. I'm a big fan of WG Sebald and writers like that. So to wander along a coast, I actually live on the coast now, so which was always my dream. So I'm very lucky in that. And yeah, weirdly enough, I'm currently reading a biography of Harry Houdini, and it's a wonderful read. Not least because a lot of it's about touring on the underground circuit in the 1890s, and in some ways it's very different, but in a lot of ways it really isn't,
Yes.
which I find quite entertaining.
I'm gonna have to find what's that book called?
I That's a fine question. I think it's just called The Life of Harry Houdini.
Okay,
It's
I'll look it
by
up. I'm not. I was
John
just looking. I
Palish.
was actually looking for a new book, so I'm gonna have a look at that. That
Great
sounds
book.
interesting.
It's a great book.
Anyway,
Thank you so
Frank,
much for your time,
thank you
Barnaby.
very much,
I'm
man.
looking for Dash.
I
Yeah,
appreciate your time. Thank you.
yeah. All the
Bye.
best, man. Take care. Hopefully, see you at a show sometime soon.
Yes, definitely.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye.